The great celestial court of Thalora shimmered like a palace carved from starlight. Pillars of crystal rose higher than mountains, glowing with the light of distant suns. Curtains of silver mist drifted across the air, carrying the faint sound of alien choirs that sang without end. It was said that even the walls listened, for every whisper spoken here carried weight across the empire. At the center of this court sat the 5 princesses of Thalora, daughters of a long and powerful line. Each of them glittered like a jewel, dressed in flowing robes of living fabric that shimmered and pulsed with light. Their eyes glowed with the brilliance of stars, and their crowns were forged from rare metals gathered from dying suns. They were worshipped, feared, and obeyed across hundreds of star systems. And yet, at this moment, they were not discussing policy, strategy, or diplomacy. They were laughing. Projected before them like ghostly images in the air were recordings brought from Earth, the blue world of humans. The images played again and again, a human soldier stumbling in the mud, his weapon slipping from his hands, a group of humans shouting at each other in a council chamber, a family running in fear from a storm they could not control. "Pathetic," said Princess Lysera, the eldest. Her voice was smooth and cold like ice across steel. She leaned back on her throne, eyes narrowed as she watched the projection of a human army retreating in chaos. "They call this a species fit for the stars." Princess Vera, sharp-tongued and quick to laugh, clapped her hands. "Look at them. Always fighting, always shouting, always breaking things. If they do not destroy themselves within a century, it will be by pure accident." The youngest, Princess Arinya, smirked. "Fragile little creatures. Their bones snap like glass, their lifespans barely worth mentioning. Imagine the boredom of living as one of them. No wonder they fight. They have nothing else to do." Their laughter echoed across the crystal hall. Courtiers and servants joined in carefully, though none dared laugh louder than the princesses themselves. It was a cruel music, polished and elegant, but cruel all the same. Only one of the sisters, Princess Selthira, did not laugh so freely. She watched the projections with a faint frown. Her eyes were softer, thoughtful. But when her elder sister's gaze turned toward her, Selthira forced a smile and said nothing. Doubt here was dangerous. The princesses carried on, mocking and sneering as more images flickered into view. Humans celebrating simple victories as if they were great achievements. Humans building machines that broke down and failed. Humans crying over their dead as if death was something new, shocking and unbearable. To the Empire of Thalora, humanity was not feared. It was not respected. It was not even considered worthy of serious attention. And yet, beyond the laughter, beyond the bright walls of the court, a storm was rising. Rumors had spread across the outer systems of the Thaloran Empire. Entire colonies gone silent. Trade ships vanishing between the stars. War fleets burned, their remains drifting in space like charred bones. The name whispered in fear was the same each time, the Veiled Dominion. The Dominion was not like humans. Where humans stumbled, argued, and bled, the Veil advanced like a tide of fire. They consumed planets, enslaved populations, and tore down empires without mercy. Some said they did not come to conquer. They came to erase. The princesses knew of this threat, though none of them showed fear. In their pride, they believed the Dominion would fall just as any other challenger had before. Their fleets were vast, their technology advanced, their soldiers countless. No empire in the galaxy, they believed, could withstand the might of Thalora. But even as they mocked humanity, even as they dismissed the weak little species from the blue world, whispers spread among the advisors of the court. Whispers that perhaps, just perhaps, Thalora's pride had blinded them. The humans, though clumsy and fragile, had survived against odds no empire would dare face. Their world had been struck by wars, disasters, famine, and chaos for thousands of years, yet humanity endured. Unlike the polished, predictable empires of the stars, humans were stubborn, reckless, and full of surprises. But the princesses did not care for such whispers. "The humans are fools," declared Princess Lysera, rising from her throne. Her robe of living fabric rippled like liquid fire as she gestured at the fading projection. "They destroy more than they create. They quarrel among themselves more than they unite. They are not allies. They are a distraction. An amusement," added Princess Vera with a sly grin. "An experiment gone wrong," Princess Arinya giggled. The court agreed with murmurs and nods, their voices blending with the glow of the chamber. Humanity to them was nothing but a fragile curiosity, destined to break before it ever reached the stars. And yet, deep within the walls of that shining court, the seeds of change had already been planted. The veiled dominion was moving closer with every passing day, and the mighty fleets of Thalora were not as untouchable as the princesses believed. Soon the storm would arrive. Soon the Empire would face fire and shadow unlike any before. And in that moment of despair, when the proud found themselves on the edge of ruin, one human would stand where no other had been allowed. One human would face the laughter of the princesses and silence it forever. The court did not know it yet. The princesses did not see it coming. But history was already turning toward the one truth. They had mocked. A single human could change the fate of an empire, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The announcement echoed through the great celestial court like a crack of thunder. "A human has arrived." The words rippled across the chamber, drawing stares, murmurs, and nervous laughter. A human? Here? Few in the Thaloran Empire had ever seen one with their own eyes. Most knew of them only through recordings, those stumbling. Quarrelsome creatures from the blue planet called Earth. For one to stand in the sacred court of the princesses was unthinkable. The massive crystal doors groaned open, and in stepped Commander Elias Grant. He was not dressed in gleaming robes of living fabric, like the Thaloran courtiers, nor did his skin glow with the faint shimmer of starlight. His uniform was simple, dark, and functional. His boots echoed on the polished floor, his breath steady though he could feel hundreds of eyes pierce him like blades. Elias was tall for a human, but compared to the towering, graceful figures of the Thalorans, he seemed smaller, less imposing. His shoulders bore no crown, no ornaments, only the plain insignia of Earth's fledgling space fleet. To the princesses, he must have looked like a soldier carved from clay, crude and unimpressive, yet his eyes, clear, sharp, unflinching, did not waver as he walked to the center of the court. Princess Lysera, eldest of the 5 sisters, leaned forward on her throne, her lips curling into a cold smile. "So, this is what humanity sends to represent them?" "One man!" The courtiers chuckled, their voices sharp as broken glass. Elias stopped in the center of the vast hall, lifted his chin, and bowed, not too deeply, not too humbly, but enough to show respect. "I am Commander Elias Grant, Ambassador of Earth. I come seeking alliance, for both our peoples face a common enemy." Princess Vera's laughter rang like silver bells, mocking and cruel. "Alliance with you? Tell me, human, what can your kind offer the Empire of Thalora? Stories of how you stumble in your wars? Lessons in how to break your own world?" The laughter grew louder. Elias stood still, letting it pass. Princess Arinya, youngest and sharpest in her cruelty, leaned forward, her glowing eyes narrowing. "Perhaps we should test him. See what a human is truly made of." With a flick of her hand, a guard stepped forward, towering over Elias. The alien warrior drew a ceremonial blade, its edge humming with energy. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The test was clear. Intimidation, perhaps humiliation. The blade's tip stopped an inch from Elias's chest. The guard sneered, expecting fear, trembling, retreat. But Elias did not move. His eyes stayed locked on the princesses, calm and steady. He spoke evenly, his voice cutting through the silence. "Do not mistake patience for weakness," the guard faltered. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. Princess Selthira, the quiet sister, tilted her head, intrigued. She had seen many alien envoys cower when tested in this way. This human did not. His words were not shouted nor desperate. They were simply steady, as if he carried a truth no blade could cut. Princess Lysera waved the guard back, her smile fading into something colder. "Bravery is meaningless if it comes from ignorance. You do not understand what you ask for, human. The dominion that approaches us will erase you before you can even lift a weapon." Elias's voice remained calm. "You believe strength lies in size, in fleets, in firepower. But humans have survived without those. We are fragile, yes. We bleed, yes. Yet every time the universe tried to end us, we endured. You see weakness. I see survival." A murmur spread through the court. His words carried a weight that was difficult to ignore. Princess Vera scoffed, hiding her unease with another cruel laugh. "Fine speeches will not win wars. You are nothing but a fragile creature of dirt." Elias did not flinch, And yet dirt grows forests. Dirt grows life. From the ground you mock we reached the stars. The court fell silent. Even those who despised humans could not deny the quiet fire in his voice. For a moment, the princesses looked at him not as a curiosity, but as something different, something unexpected. But pride was heavy in the great celestial court. Beyond the walls of the celestial court, the galaxy was shifting. News came first as whispers, traders arriving late, their fleets damaged, eyes wide with fear. Then came silence, long stretches of space where once thriving colonies no longer sent messages. Finally, there were the survivors. Broken ships drifting into Thalaran's space. Hulls scorched, crews half mad with terror. They spoke a single name, the Veiled Dominion. The Dominion was unlike any empire the galaxy had known. They did not trade, they did not negotiate, they did not rule. They consumed. Where they passed, nothing living remained. Entire moons were stripped bare, planets reduced to ash, and star systems silenced. No one had seen their homeworld. No one had ever captured one of their leaders. All that remained in their wake was destruction. In the court of the princesses, the reports were read aloud. Lysera listened with narrowed eyes, her jaw tight. Vera yawned, bored. Arinya laughed, dismissing the accounts as exaggerations. Only Selthira leaned forward, her face pale. "This is not rumor," Selthira said, her voice trembling. "The Dominion moves closer each day. Already they have devoured 2 border systems. If they reach our core worlds, they will not," Lysera interrupted. Her voice carried steel. "Our fleets are the strongest in the galaxy. Do not let fear guide you, sister." Elias Grant stood at the edge of the court, listening. He had been granted no throne, no seat of honor, merely a place where the princesses could glance at him and remember his presence if they wished. Yet he listened more carefully than any of the courtiers. He had seen this before, in another time, on another world. Arrogance in the face of danger, pride blinding leaders to what crept ever closer. When the last survivor's account was finished, the court erupted in argument. Some demanded larger fleets. Others insisted the Dominion was nothing but shadows. The princesses ruled with laughter and disdain, but the cracks beneath their confidence were beginning to show. It was then Elias spoke. "You underestimate them." The words cut across the noise. The court turned toward him. Some sneered. How dare a human interrupt? Others waited, curious. The princesses stared with eyes that burned like stars. Elias stepped forward. His voice was steady, low, carrying the weight of memory. "The Dominion does not come to conquer. They come to erase. They will study your fleets, learn your tactics, and tear them apart. You think your strength lies in perfection, in shining order. But order is fragile. Once it breaks, it shatters." Princess Vera smirked. "And what would you know of such things, human? Your kind barely crawled into space." Elias did not falter. "We know because we've lived it. We've fought wars against enemies who outnumbered us, outgunned us, outmatched us. And yet we survived. Not because we were the strongest, not because we were the smartest, but because we adapt, because we refuse to surrender." The words hung in the air, sharp as blades. Arinya rolled her eyes, but her laughter was thinner now. Lysera's smile faded. Selthira leaned closer, studying Elias as though seeing him for the first time. "Your fleets are vast," Elias continued. "Your weapons powerful. But you are predictable. You march in perfect formations, fight by rigid rules. The Dominion will turn that against you. If you keep fighting the way you always have, you will lose. And when you lose, you will fall. All of you." The silence that followed was heavy. The courtiers shifted nervously, their laughter gone. Finally, Lysera stood, her robe shimmering like fire. "Enough, you are bold human, but do not mistake boldness for wisdom. We will not tremble before shadows. The Dominion will break upon us, just as all others have before." The court cheered, their voices rising in hollow confidence. Yet not all of them cheered. Some glanced at Elias with unease, as though his words had struck too close to truth. Selthira's gaze lingered longest. She did not cheer. Elias bowed his head slightly, but his eyes were still sharp, unyielding. He had seen the storm coming. And though they mocked him now, soon the Empire would learn that pride was no shield against the fire of the Dominion. The princesses believed humanity useless, fragile, unworthy. But when the first wave of invasion came, when the Dominion's fire reached the gates of Thalora, only one human would know the truth of what awaited them, and he would be the only one ready to face it. The warning came not as words but as fire. one of the outer. Fleets of Thalora had been dispatched to confront the Dominion advance. 20 gleaming warships, each larger than a human city, lined up in flawless formation. Their hulls shone with silver light, their engines blazing like newborn stars. To the Thalorans it was a show of power, a declaration that their empire would not bend, but the Dominion was waiting. When the fleets met at the edge of a dying system, silence hung for a breath, then the void erupted. Dominion ships tore from the darkness like beasts of metal, jagged and sharp, moving with terrifying speed. Their weapons lanced through Thaloran shields as if they were paper, and within moments half the fleet was burning. Back in the Celestial Court, the princesses watched through vast projections, their faces pale. Other courtiers gasped, stunned by the sight of ships they believed invincible shattering like glass. They were unprepared, Lysera hissed, her voice cold but uncertain. The commanders are inexperienced, but Elias saw more. Standing at the edge of the chamber, his fists clenched, he read the battle like a story written across the stars. The Thalorans fought with elegance, their ships holding perfect formation, their fire precise and disciplined. Yet the Dominion moved with chaos, breaking apart and striking from angles no rigid fleet could match. "They're predictable," Elias said aloud. His voice cut through the panic. "You march like statues across the battlefield. The Dominion isn't playing by your rules, they're hunting you." Arinya snapped her head toward him, her face flushed with anger. "Silence, human. You have no right to—" But her words were drowned by another explosion on the screen. Another ship lost. Another thousands of lives gone in fire. The room fell silent, all eyes on the battle. And in that silence, Elias spoke again. "Your commanders won't win like this, but there's still a way to save them." The princesses turned toward him. Their pride fought against the truth, but desperation was heavier now. Even Lysera's lips were pressed into a thin line, her eyes burning with frustration. "What would you suggest?" she asked finally, her voice low and sharp. Elias stepped forward. "Break formation. Scatter the fleet. Force the Dominion to chase. Use their speed against them. Hit them from every angle. Don't fight like statues, fight like predators." Gasps echoed through the court. To break formation was unthinkable. It was chaos, dishonor, a betrayal of centuries of Thaloran tradition. Yet as they watched another warship fall, even the proudest among them felt their certainty waver. At last, Selthira leaned forward, her voice trembling but strong. "Send the order." The courtiers erupted in protest, but the princess's word carried weight. The command was sent. On the battlefield, the Silver Fleet shifted. For the first time, they did not hold their perfect lines. Instead, the ships broke apart, scattering across the stars. Dominion vessels lunged to pursue, chasing what they thought were fleeing prey. But then the Thalorans struck back, darting from the shadows, hitting and vanishing, weaving a dance of chaos unlike anything in their history. The Dominion advance slowed. Several of their ships were caught in traps, their hulls torn apart by sudden crossfire. The Thalorans did not win that day, but they escaped annihilation. Half the fleet survived, limping back toward the core worlds. And in the Celestial Court, silence hung heavy. Elias stood tall, his eyes fixed on the fading projection. "This is only the beginning. If you keep fighting your way, you will lose everything. If you want to survive, you must learn to fight like us." For the first time, the princesses did not laugh. Selthira's eyes glimmered with something new, not mockery, not pity, but respect. Lysera said nothing, though her silence spoke louder than any insult. Vera bit her lip, hiding her unease behind a mask of disdain. Arinya looked away, shaken by what she had seen. The Thaloran Empire had faced the Dominion for the first time, and their pride had nearly cost them everything. And though they hated to admit it, a single human had saved them from total destruction. It was only the beginning. The halls of the Celestial Court were quieter than usual. Gone was the easy laughter that once followed every human recording. Gone was the unshakable pride that had wrapped the princesses like armor. The Dominion strike had left scars, not only on their fleets but on their confidence. The surviving commanders limped back to Thaloran space, their voices shaken, their eyes hollow. They spoke of Dominion ships moving like shadows, of weapons that sliced through shields, of tactics no Thaloran fleet could match. Pride had cracked, fear had begun to spread, and through it all one name whispered across the Empire: the human, Commander Elias Grant, the outsider they had mocked, had given the order that saved half the fleet. A man without glowing eyes or a shining robe had done what the most decorated admirals of Thalora had not. The courtiers tried to ignore it, but the truth seeped through every word spoken in the court. Even those who hated the thought of honoring a human could not deny what they had seen. In the next council, Elias stood again at the edge of the chamber. This time, when the reports were read, no one laughed. No one dared. Princess Lysera sat tall, her face calm, though her hands gripped the edge of her throne too tightly. "We cannot deny that your suggestion spared us," she admitted, the words heavy. "But luck is not strategy. Do not believe a single moment of chaos makes your kind equal to us." Elias's expression did not change. He bowed his head slightly, then spoke. "It wasn't luck. It was survival. Humans have lived on the edge of extinction for thousands of years. We don't fight for glory or pride or tradition. We fight because if we don't, we're gone," the court murmured uneasily. His words were plain, almost too simple, yet they carried a weight the most elegant speeches lacked. Princess Arinya scoffed, though her laughter sounded hollow now. "So you would have us abandon centuries of order? Throw away the very discipline that made us strong?" Elias's eyes locked on hers. "Order makes you strong when the enemy follows the same rules. But what happens when the enemy doesn't?" The question silenced her. It was Princess Selthira who broke the stillness. She leaned forward, her eyes bright, her voice calm but urgent. "Then teach us. If humanity has survived against the impossible, then show us how. Let our commanders learn what makes your kind endure." The chamber erupted in shock. Teach them. Learn from a human? It was unthinkable. Yet the seed had been planted, and silence fell again as everyone waited for Lysera's judgment. At last the eldest princess gave a curt nod. "Very well. Let him speak." And so Elias began. Day after day he trained Thaloran officers in strategies no one in their empire had ever considered. He spoke of deception, of feints, of sacrificing order for survival. He showed them how to mask strength with weakness, how to lure enemies into traps, how to turn chaos into a weapon. The Thalorans resisted at first. Their pride chafed at his words. They stumbled when asked to abandon their flawless formations. They hesitated when told to think like predators rather than soldiers. But slowly, painfully, they learned. The first time a Thaloran commander executed a human-style ambush and returned victorious, the court was stunned. The second time, the whispers grew louder. By the third, the princesses themselves could no longer deny the results. Elias never shouted, never boasted. His voice was steady, his presence calm. Yet in every lesson, his words carried the weight of a people who had been forced to fight not for empire, not for conquest, but for survival itself. "Humans fight," he told them, "because we must. Not because we are the strongest, but because surrender has never been an option. Every breath we take is defiance. Every victory, no matter how small, is survival bought with blood. That is our strength, not our bodies, not our weapons, our will." The court listened. The commanders learned. Even the princesses began to see humanity with new eyes. Princess Vera, once the quickest to mock, now studied Elias in silence, her cruel laughter gone. Arinya no longer dared dismiss him with sharp words, for too many of her own officers whispered his lessons with respect. Selthira, always the quiet watcher, carried a spark of admiration she did not bother to hide. Even Lysera, though she never spoke it aloud, looked at Elias with something closer to recognition than contempt. The human had earned their attention, their respect. And beyond the walls of the court, as the Dominion prepared its next assault, the whispers grew louder still. Perhaps the fragile creatures of Earth were not so fragile after. Or perhaps humanity had something the galaxy had never seen before, a will that refused to break. The storm finally came. For weeks, Elias had warned the princesses that the Dominion would not stop with small raids. He told them that the enemy was gathering, that the border strikes were nothing more than tests. Many in the court had doubted him still, clinging to the belief that Thalora's fleets were unbreakable. But when the first reports arrived, even the proudest could no longer deny the truth. The Dominion was moving on the capital. Thousands of their jagged warships poured through the stars like a tide of fire, swallowing everything in their path. Colonies vanished in hours. Defense stations burned. Entire planets went silent. And now the Dominion's fleets pushed toward Thalora's heart, toward the shining world where the princesses ruled. The celestial court trembled. For the first time in centuries, fear took root in the Empire's core. Elias stood in the war chamber, the vast projection of the galaxy burning before him. Red marks spread like wounds across the star map, creeping ever closer. Around him, Thaloran admirals argued, shouting over one another in panic. Some demanded a full retreat. Others wanted to concentrate the fleets in one last desperate stand. The princesses sat high above, their faces pale. Even Lysera, who had never shown fear, clenched her fists until her knuckles glowed white. At last Elias spoke. His voice cut through the noise. If you fight them as you always have, you will lose. If you retreat, you will lose. If you wait, you will burn. There is only one way forward. The room fell silent. Hundreds of glowing eyes turned toward him. We must strike first. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Shock, outrage, disbelief. Strike first? Against the full Dominion fleet? Madness. But Elias pressed on. They believe you will stand in perfect formation, guarding your capital, waiting for their hammer to fall. That's what they expect. So we give them what they do not expect. He raised his hand, gesturing to the map. We lure them into the system. Let them believe they've broken through your defenses. Then, while they advance, we strike from behind. Not with your strongest fleets, but with smaller, faster groups. We turn the capital into bait. And when they're surrounded, we cut them apart piece by piece. The chamber erupted in shouts. To risk the capital as bait was unthinkable. But beneath the outrage lay another truth. There was no other plan. Princess Selthira's voice rose above the chaos. He is right. All eyes turned toward her. She stood tall, her robes of silver mist glowing in the chamber's light. We cannot meet the Dominion on their terms. They will devour us. But if we fight as he says, as predators, not statues, then we have a chance. Lysera's face was carved from stone. Slowly she rose from her throne. Her voice carried across the chamber, cold and steady. So be it, the humans' plan will stand. Prepare the fleets. The order was given, and so the final stand began. When the Dominion fleets entered the system, they came like a storm, vast and unending, filling the void with their jagged shapes. The skies above Thalora turned red with their fire. To the enemy it looked like victory already won. But then the trap closed. Thaloran's ships burst from hidden positions behind moons and asteroids, striking from the shadows. Squadrons darted through the chaos, vanishing and reappearing like ghosts. Dominion ships were split apart, isolated, hunted. For the first time, the Thalorans fought with chaos, with unpredictability, with human cunning. And at the center of it all stood Elias, commanding not from behind safety, but from the front lines. His orders cut through the madness, guiding the fleets with calm precision. He saw patterns where others saw chaos, weakness where others saw only strength. Every feint, every trap, every strike was his hand at work. The battle raged for hours. Planets trembled. Stars burned. Thousands of lives were lost. But slowly, impossibly, the Dominion advance faltered. Their endless tide crashed against a wall of willpower they had not expected. In the celestial court, the princesses watched, their eyes wide with awe. The human they had once mocked now stood as the key to their survival. When the final Dominion flagship was torn apart, its burning wreckage scattering across the void, silence filled the chamber. The impossible had been done. The Empire still stood, but Elias did not smile. His voice was steady as ever, though tired. This is only one battle. The Dominion will come again, but now you know how to fight them. Now you know you can. The princesses rose from their thrones, no longer with laughter, no longer with scorn. For the first time in history they bowed their heads, not to a conqueror, not to a rival, but to a human. And in that moment Elias Grant became more than an ambassador. He became a symbol. The fragile creature of dirt had stood against the fire, and the fire had broken first. The fires of battle slowly faded. Where once the skies had blazed red with Dominion warships, now only wreckage drifted, vast broken hulks glowing faintly in the void. The capital world of Thalora still stood, scarred but unbroken. The impossible had been done. When the last enemy signal vanished, a silence spread across the war chamber. It was not the silence of fear nor of despair. It was the silence of awe. The Thalorans, who had thought themselves untouchable, had looked into the jaws of annihilation and survived. And they knew why. All eyes turned toward Elias Grant. He stood weary but unbowed, his uniform torn, his voice hoarse from hours of command. His face bore the exhaustion of countless choices, each measured in lives lost and lives saved. Yet there was no triumph in his expression, only steady resolve. Princess Selthira was the first to speak. She rose from her throne, her voice soft yet clear. "Without him we would have fallen." The words hung heavy in the court. Slowly, the others followed. Commanders lowered their heads. Courtiers fell to their knees. Even Princess Vera, once cruel in her mockery, could not hold Elias's gaze for long. Finally, Lysera, eldest and proudest of the sisters, rose. She stepped down from her throne and stood before Elias. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, in a voice that carried the weight of centuries, she bowed her head. "Human of Earth," she said, "we mocked you. We called your kind fragile, weak, unworthy. And yet it was you who showed us how to endure. You who reminded us that strength is not found in pride, but in will. For that the Empire of Thalora owes you its survival." Gasps filled the chamber. Never before had a princess bowed to another, much less to an outsider. Yet now, one by one, the other sisters joined her. Hariny's arrogance faltered into humility. Vera's sharp tongue fell silent as she bent her head. Selthira, already admiring, lowered herself with quiet reverence. And together, the 5 daughters of Thalora bowed to a single human. Elias did not bask in it. He simply inclined his head, his voice steady. "I did not come for honor. I came for survival, yours and ours. The Dominion will return. When they do, you must remember this. It is not fleets or weapons alone that win wars. It is the will to stand, even when the universe demands you kneel." The princesses listened, and for once not one of them argued. In the weeks that followed, Thalora changed. Their fleets no longer marched in flawless statues of light, but moved with cunning, striking from shadows, unpredictable and fierce. Their commanders spoke of deception, of adaptation, of survival, the lessons of humanity woven into the very heart of their strategy. Across the empire, the name Elias Grant was whispered not with laughter, but with respect. He became known as the Unbroken, the man who had taught an empire to bend without breaking. When his time came to return to Earth, the court gathered once more. This time there was no mocking laughter, no cruel amusement. Instead, the 5 princesses stood before him, their crowns glowing with starlight. "You came here as an outsider," Lysera said. "You leave as a guardian of our people. Know this, human, your legacy will endure among the stars." Elias gave a faint smile, his eyes steady. "Legacies don't matter. What matters is that when the next storm comes, you'll be ready." And with that he departed. The court watched his ship vanish into the dark, leaving trails of fire against the void. The princesses remained silent long after he was gone. For deep within them, each knew the truth. The empire of Thalora had been saved not by their crowns nor their fleets, nor their pride. It had been saved by a human, a fragile creature of dirt who had refused to kneel. And across the galaxy, in whispers and in song, his legacy began to spread. Sometimes, the smallest voice could change the loudest empire. Generations passed. The Dominion struck again and again, but never as they had before. Each time they came, the Thalorans met them not as statues of light, but as hunters in the dark, cunning, fierce, unyielding. And in every battle, echoes of a human's voice guided their tactics, their courage, their resolve. Elias Grant had long since returned to Earth. His name faded from public record, buried beneath politics and history. But among the stars his memory lived on, not as a man but as a legend. In the academies of Thalora, cadets repeated his lessons as if they were scripture. Do not fight where the enemy expects. Do not show them what they seek. Bend, and you will not break. His words became more than strategy. They became a way of life. Among the people, stories grew. Children whispered of the human who had stood against fire. Merchants sang of the outsider who had saved their empire. To many, Elias was more myth than man, a guardian spirit watching from beyond the stars. And yet, in the celestial court, the truth was kept alive. The 5 princesses, older now, tempered by war and wisdom, ensured that the name Elias Grant would never be forgotten. They spoke of him not with pity nor amusement, but with reverence. For they knew what the galaxy had not yet learned, that sometimes the smallest spark could ignite the greatest flame. One evening, centuries after that first war, Princess Lysera, now an empress, stood on a balcony overlooking the endless stars. A young Thalaran officer approached her, hesitant. "High Empress," he asked, "why do we honor a human still after so long? Their kind has not walked our halls in centuries." Lysera turned, her gaze sharp yet softened by memory. "Because he changed us, because he proved that pride is hollow without will. And because one day, when the Dominion or another foe rises stronger than before, it may not be Thalora that stands in their path." The officer tilted his head. "Then who will?" Lysera looked back at the stars, her voice a whisper. "Perhaps another human, fragile, foolish, underestimated, and yet unbroken." The young officer fell silent, struck by the weight of her words. And somewhere beyond the reach of their empire, on a quiet world called Earth, humanity continued on, still clumsy, still flawed, still underestimated. But among the stars, in every corner of the Thalaran Empire, the whisper endured. "Remember Elias Grant. Remember the human who taught us to survive." And so, what began as laughter in a court of mocking princesses became something far greater, an eternal legacy, echoing through galaxies, a reminder to all who would scorn humanity: never mistake fragility for weakness, never mistake laughter for truth, and never ever underestimate a human. Centuries later, the galaxy had changed. The Dominion was fractured, beaten back time and again, but new powers had risen in the void they left behind. Alliances shifted, empires rose, and the Thalarans, once proud, once mocking, now stood as one of the galaxy's strongest defenders. And yet, whispers of a storm gathered once more. Strange signals rippled through the void. Fleets vanished without trace. Entire colonies fell silent. The threat was not the Dominion reborn. It was something older, darker, and unknown. In the halls of the Celestial Court, the new generation of rulers gathered. They bore the crowns of their foremothers, but their eyes burned with different fire, discipline, tempered wisdom, and the legacy of Elias Grant. And then, across the stars, something unexpected happened. Earth answered. For centuries, humanity had been quiet, dismissed by the galaxy as small, inward, too fractured to matter. But in the shadow of this new enemy, the humans revealed how much they had grown. They came not with laughter nor apology, but with fleets of their own. Strange ships built for cunning rather than power. Vessels designed to deceive, outmaneuver, and endure. At their head was a descendant of Elias Grant, not a warrior, not a conqueror, an ambassador just as he had been. But within them burned the same quiet defiance, the same unyielding will. The Thalarans, upon hearing the name Grant, fell into silence. Across the chamber, memories stirred. For them it was not a name, it was a warning, a promise, a legend come alive again. And so the cycle began anew. Humanity, once mocked, once doubted, now stood not as a fragile ally, but as a force the galaxy could no longer ignore. The new threat loomed, vast and merciless. The galaxy trembled, empires faltered, but in the darkest hour, two voices rose together once more. Human and Thalaran. And as the stars prepared for war, one truth echoed louder than fear itself. The legacy of Elias Grant had returned.